Well, good evening, everyone. We welcome you and thank you for joining us for the Pick Your Own Twilight question and answer session. We know that this is a strange time and perhaps a hard time, certainly a time that's filled with a lot of uncertainty. And we wanted to present a forum where we could get together and discuss some questions and concerns and perhaps provide some resources and information that would be helpful to you. I'm Megan Leffew with the University of Tennessee Extension Center for Profitable Agriculture. Joining us tonight, we have specialists from UT Extension in the departments of Plant Sciences and Food Science, also Agricultural Economics, and the Center for Profitable Agriculture. We also have representatives from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture with us, and we want to just help try to address any questions that you have regarding operating a Pick Your Own in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll take a look at the chat box here. We really want to spend as much time as we can answering questions that you have. We have some information that we can share on the in some slides, but we can certainly try to address your questions first. So let's go to the chat box here. So the first question is, are you all still going to do Pick Your Own with children? Any of our specialists want to chime in on that one?
Good evening, this is Annette Wislacki. I'm the commercial vegetable specialist for UT, and I can try to answer that, and I think that might be a partially TDA question as well, so they might want to chime in. But in these strange times, as Megan said, it's kind of like going to the grocery store, and the Pick Your Own operation is something that you usually do as a family activity, and it's fun, but you do want to try to limit the number of people that you have out on your farm.
I think in addition to that, you want people there who can effectively wash their hands and socially distance and use all the protocols to keep your employees and other customers safe. And small children in particular, that's probably not the best place for them to be right now. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
This is Dave Lockwood. I'm the fruit specialist UT. I agree with what's been said. Basically, we should have responsible adults or children that can look after themselves and do as Megan had said about social distancing. And also, I might point out, in addition to that, along with young children, pets should not be brought to the farms at this time either.
That's an excellent point. We actually recommend that pets and even your own farm pets shouldn't be allowed, out at a agritourism operation. There's lots of issues with that, but particularly at this point in time. The next question I see is, are you just going to do already picked with a drive-through versus Pick Your Own? I'll start with that. If you have the capability to pre-pick and do pre-sales and have curbside pickup, I think that would certainly be perhaps the best option for folks right now in order to minimize risk. Folks may not all have that capability, the labor and other resources enabled to do all pre-picked, but if that's a possibility for you, I think that would be a good way to go. Any others on that?
Yeah, this is Dave Lockwood again. I agree. Ideally, if it was pre-picked, you could get people taken care of without them ever having to get out of their vehicle, and they could get in and get out faster and therefore have less chance of getting too close to others or what have you. Even if you should do pick your own, I think pre-pick will continue to be a fairly major part of the market. It was actually in most pick your own operations before the COVID virus, coronavirus concern came along anyhow.
And I'll just chime in there again as well. This is Annette. If you are doing like a curbside service and people are paying you, it would be great to have one person that handles the fruit and one person that handles the money. So you're not going back and forth and touching the money and then touching the fruit. So that's another thing to consider as far as the number of people you might need to be working at your operation.
That's a great point, Annette, and that actually leads into the next question about whether or not to accept cash or only accept cards for the ease of not having to handle that cash. And cash certainly can be extremely dirty. So and if you can avoid handling cards even, that would be great. If you can do pre-sales where they order online and pay online and they show up curbside and you hand them the fruit, that would be the best. As much as you can limit contact would be ideal. Cash is certainly the dirtiest option perhaps to handle, so having a separate person doing that. I've even seen some folks suggest that, you know, cash coming in, you ask for correct change for folks to have correct change for you so you don't have to give money back. You take the cash in, put it in a separate container, and then put that container away, of course, in a safe and secure location, but put it away for 3 or 4 days and don't handle that cash at that time, so you don't you aren't getting the germs from that after so long the virus is not active anymore on that cash.
Yeah, this is
Other
Dave
thoughts?
Dave Lockwood here. Whatever you do, if you've got anything special like not taking cash or what have you, it needs to be advertised in advance so that people don't get out there with without any other means other than cash to pay for their purchases.
Mm-hmm. Pre-visit communications are going to be extremely important this year. Everything is different this year, so it will be really important for you to figure out what your procedures are, what you're going to do as far as pre-pick versus pick your own. If you're scheduling for pickers to come in at certain times to limit the number of folks, you know, the procedures that you're having them follow on the farm, whether you're accepting cash and exact change or credit. Some folks may change the way they charge. If they charged by weight before, it would be simpler this year to charge perhaps by the container and pre-sell that container before they go to the field. So in addition to using new containers provided by the farm and not allowing used containers to come in or containers from off the farm. So any sort of those procedures that are, especially if they're different, can be outlined for consumers any way that you can get that information to them. The phone message that you have, your social media, website, updating your Pick Tennessee product listing, any emails that you have out, and perhaps even some local media coverage of those things to get the word out to folks about how things are going to happen at the farm, to set their expectations before they get there. All right, if no other input on that one, should we let anyone into our farm market? And if so, what precautions do we need to take? And similarly, should we let anyone use our restrooms?
So this is Annette, and I think as far as letting anyone in your market, that's kind of a tricky question because we, of course, want to let people in, and that comes back to what Megan was talking about. If about having a very clear procedure for your farm this year and making that widely known. So I would have a procedure, and there was a farm, a Pick Your Own Blueberry farm in Florida that has a nice document on their Facebook page, and we can share that with you all after this call tonight. But it really outlines what they're doing and what they expect from you. So they say, you know, we don't want you on your farm if you feel sick, you have a fever, all of those same things that we've been hearing. So again, having really clear messages to all your customers that if you're feeling sick, we don't want you on the farm today, let us know how we can help you. And we have signs that we can share with you for that as well. And they're in some of our resources. But just being really clear with people that you don't want them on the farm if they're feeling bad in any way. And then as far as the precautions you can take, as you know, the CDC recommended if we're outside of the house that we're wearing masks, and masks are very hard to come by right now. So that might be something you put in your message to your customers. If you come to our farm, we want you to wear a mask. And, you know, maybe resend the CDC how to make a mask out of a t-shirt or a bandana or something like that, because masks are really hard to find right now. And then should we let anyone use the restrooms? So again, if you have a restroom, you do want them to use the restroom, because when they get to your farm, you sure want to make sure that they're washing their hands well before they get out into your field. So they at least need to use your hand washing facilities. And then you have to have a procedure for how you're going to go about cleaning that restroom. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is Dave Lockwood again. One thing that you may end up having to have some person in charge of kind of limiting the number of people that come into the market at any one time, if you do allow people into your market. I talked with a grower out of state the other day, and they had far more people show up initially than what they'd ever bargained for. And so we may have to do like some of the businesses like Walmart and Home Depot, where they actually will limit the number of people that are in the structure at any one time.
And that's an important point, and it comes back to having that already picked fruit, because if you do get a bunch of people that come and you can't let them in your field, and you say, well, we have a half-hour wait to get out to pick in the field, that could potentially tick your customers off, not only for this year, but also for future years. So you want to have that sort of plan in place, that you have a waiting area, and if they really want to pick, instead of taking it and going from pre-picked fruit that you might have, you might try something like a text that you send them a text when it's their turn to pick, and you have a waiting parking area or something like that. Just because, as Dave said, there is a lot of interest this year. And so you want to think about every possibility, so you're not tying people up for a long time and still keeping all those social distancing measures and safety measures in place.
If you have places where you think people are going to tend to line up, like coming into the market or at the cashier or for the restroom, it can be helpful to set up some ropes or some sort of line with indications of where every 6 feet are, or if you have a floor where you could put tape or tape a sign to the floor to help remind them about the social distancing and to mark off that 6 feet. For that. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, going back to one of the things Annette had said about masks, and I think it's good to tell people how to make them. I think it would be important to tell them that you do not have masks for them to use while they're at the farm. You cannot provide that. Make sure they understand that.
Excellent point. Yes, I would make sure that people are bringing their own, and you are not providing them. The next question, what disinfectant solution should we use to clean for COVID-19?
So this is a great question, and there are lots of disinfectant solutions that you can use for COVID-19. And on the utvegetable.com website, we have the list of all the approved disinfectants that you can use from the EPA. But the simplest one you can use is going to be regular old household bleach. but there's a few things that you need to know about that if you want to use bleach for your disinfectant solution. So we often talk about cleaning and disinfecting and sanitizing, and there are differences between all of those that are important to recognize. So for all of these things, just like with your hands, you can't sanitize or disinfect a dirty surface. So it's really important that you clean that surface first, and that involves getting any debris off that surface and then scrubbing it with a detergent and then rinsing it, and then you're going to apply that sanitizer or that disinfectant. If you're just going to slap the disinfectant or the sanitizer down, it's not going to work the way that it's intended. So it's really important to clean first. So if you're using bleach, generally for sanitizing, which is what we want to use on any surface that's going to come in contact with the food, you're going to use about 100 to 200 parts per million of bleach. When we're talking about disinfecting, we're going to use a much higher concentration. So the CDC recommends that you're using 1,000 parts per million to disinfect surfaces that are not going to come directly in contact with the food. So 1,000 parts per million of bleach would just be 5 tablespoons in a gallon of water. Now, a couple more things about that. When you're mixing up bleach, you want to keep in mind that it is sensitive to UV rays. So you want to either put it in a bottle where it's not going to get contact with the sun, and that's why it comes in a white bottle. But if you don't have that and you're using it in a spray bottle, you want to make sure that you're remixing it every 24 hours if it has been exposed to sun, because it'll break down, and then again, you won't get that same effectiveness. The other thing about disinfectants, besides being a higher concentration, is that we need to put them on for a higher amount of what we call contact time. So they need to be touching that surface longer. And for disinfecting with bleach, that's up to about 10 minutes. So if you just put it on there, spray it on, and wipe it right off, again, it's not going to have the intended effect to get all those potential bacteria and viruses and things off of that surface. So you really want to make sure that you're not only paying attention to the concentration, but also to the time that it's going to be on the surface. And of course, bleach is an easy one, but there are others, and always make sure that you follow the label.
Great info. Perhaps a related question, what kind of soap should we use for hand washing?
So just any liquid soap that you can find now. It doesn't really matter what type of soap. It doesn't have to be antibacterial or anything like that. Just regular old soap that you can get, and so people can squirt it on their hand and go. But I would mention, since we're talking about washing your hands right now, a few things for hand washing. And we have examples again on the website that you can download for your farm on hand washing signs, because these are really important. We keep hearing, wash your hands for 20 seconds, and it's really important to do that and wash all the different surfaces, get in between your fingers, get under your fingernails, get up through your wrists. But we want to make sure that people know how to do that properly, and it's really important, especially in a pick your own type operation, that once people are done washing and rinsing their hands and they take that paper towel, that they're shutting off that, once they dry their hands, that they shut off the faucet with that paper towel, because you turned it on when your hands were dirty, and then you're cleaning your hands, and if you shut it off with your hand, now you're potentially recontaminating your hand. So that's a really important thing that we often don't see, and the signs that we have on the website will show you that, and they're great to have there, but it's also great to really stress that point, because we don't want people to recontaminate themselves, and you don't know if everybody washed their hands as well as you did before you. So having that really clear signage is important.
A related question, you covered the part here related to masks, but Teresa is asking, do consumers need to bring gloves? Mark or Nathan, you want to weigh in?
This is Nathan Miller with the Food Science Department here at the UT Extension Service. As far as wearing gloves, if it's for your own family, I would recommend you go ahead and wash your hands thoroughly, and you can go ahead and without using gloves. But remember, and we'll talk a little bit later about in the presentation, that gloves are mainly there to protect the food, not so much the hands. These types of gloves anyways that we're looking at is like a polyvinyl or a nitrile type glove. But if it's for your own consumption, you know, washing your hands thoroughly prior to picking would be sufficient as far as what you would need. Recommendations for picking employees, picking for other people. You could also get into utilizing gloves, but if you didn't have the gloves due to the shortages, making sure that you wash your hands thoroughly and you're not touching any surfaces or your face or coughing and things like that without re-washing your hands before you are touching the fruit. So some of those type recommendations as well.
And I wouldn't really recommend gloves for the people that are coming on your farm to pick. Just as Nathan said, it's to protect the fruit, not necessarily the person, not your hands. But oftentimes people do have that false sense of security that if they're using gloves, they don't need to wash their hands first. And then that causes all sorts of problems, and people don't know how to take them off right. So then they're, you know, contaminating again. So it's really important for your workers, especially the ones that are going to be handling the money. If you are taking money, that's a situation where I would use gloves, because again, money's really dirty. I would want that protection from touching everybody's money that comes in. But as far as everyone that's coming to your operation to pick, no, I would have hand washing stations there and direct them to the hand washing station before they ever get out to the field, and really make sure you have good signage out there and have somebody that kind of is patrolling it a little bit. I mean, you're not going to be a hand washing police and go and make everyone go back for 15 seconds if they weren't there long enough, but just so they know that someone's actually paying attention and it's not something you're telling them to do, but then they can walk off and not do it.
It's really critical as well that your employees set a good example on that. The public needs to see them doing this and doing it the proper way.
And a hand washing station is a great thing to have on your farm. And it's a great time to give a plug to the TDA, because this is something that you can put on your farm through the Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program if you don't already have hand washing facilities on your farm. And if you don't have them on your farm, it's not something that has to cost a lot of money. There are easy things that you can do to have hand washing facilities on your farm. It can be as easy as getting a jug that has a spigot on it from one of the big box stores, and you can then put it on a bench or make a little 2x4 stand for it, have a 5-gallon bucket underneath it, and then have your soap and paper towels there. That's the one up in the top left-hand corner. And so that's really low cost. It's under 20 bucks. The only thing is it only holds about 5 gallons of water, so somebody's going to have to be patrolling the water if you have a high volume of folks. There's a sink there with a faucet that hooks up to the hose, and that's something that you just, again, want to have a tank for that gray water so it's not coming out on the ground and people are stepping in it and then going in your field. The one in the bottom right-hand corner is one from an agritourism operation, and it's pretty clever to have a trough there and several sinks. Again, right now, we want to make sure that there's nobody in those middle two sinks, but you could probably have a person on each end there, and you see the soap and the paper towels are really easy for them to get. The only other thing we need is a trash can. I called one of the rental facilities yesterday for portable toilets and hand washing facilities, and they were completely out of the hand washing stations right now. But in your area, that might be a good option for you. They told me that the hand washing station is $90 for 28 days, and they will come out and service it. So refill the soap and redo the paper towels once a week. And again, that might not be enough for how much traffic you have coming through, but you want to have something there so somebody can wash hands. In the longer term, again, utilize that TAEP money and get something more permanent on your farm. So you always have that available, because it's just a good food safety practice to have people wash their hands before they go out and pick.
For folks who are allowing pick your own in the field, what are some recommendations for managing folks as they are out there in the field and moving through the patches?
So again, we want to maintain that social distance, and you want to think about the flow of your field, and it's going to depend on how large your field is, but there's several things that you could do to prevent people from coming in contact with one another. You can have rows going only one way, and you tell people exactly where you want them to start. Another good thing is to have them color coded, so people can be really visual, and you can say, all right, you're going to go pick in the blue row, and they have a blue flag there that they know to go right to that row and start picking there. Another thing you could do is have numbered blocks or rows, depending again on how big your fields are. So they know, okay, I'm in the blue row and I'm in section 1 or section A, depending on how long that is. And so that's really important, that they stick to where they're supposed to be. So here's another person that you want to have out in the field to help direct people exactly where you want them to be, and then make sure that they stay there and they're not saying, oh, I see some red berries, 2 rows over, I'm going over there, and somebody else, then they come in contact with other people. So it's really important you have a plan to make sure all your customers feel safe out there and know what your procedures are.
It would be worthwhile also if you had a way of marking where a customer stopped picking so that you could start a new one at that point. They need to have a fair amount of fruit available to them if you want them to keep within the assigned area. If fruit is pretty scarce because the area has been picked over recently, they're going to be more inclined to drift. And realize too that as you go down between a row, you're going to have people picking on each side of the row middle where they're at. So as you lay out the field, keep that in mind.
Excellent point, Dave. A follow-up question to the discussion about having children. Is there an age cutoff that you're recommending in particular?
I don't think we have a target age. I might let someone else weigh in on that. I know from my own experience, we have strawberries that are coming in out at the organic farm, and I've been taking my kids out there to get some work done at the farm that I need to do. And I sent them over to pick by themselves the other day, and my older son, who's almost 10, said, I don't think you should send me over there with my brother anymore because he's stepping on plants. He's only 5. So I would say the 10-year-old has it down, the 5-year-old not so much. So 10 might be a good cutoff age.
And it may depend a little bit on the child as well. There may be some 12-year-olds who shouldn't be there, and there may be a 9-year-old who would be okay. But you may have to just pick a number instead of leaving that subjective to your customers, if that's something you want to do. We are looking for more questions in the chat box. If anybody has a question, please submit it in there, and we will. I'm looking back through to make sure that I haven't missed one. We have talked about several things, and one thing I think I mentioned briefly is this is a great year for you as a farm to buy the containers, so you can give new containers to those customers as they go out to the field to pick, and not have those returned to use again. we've talked a lot about maybe some additional supplies you need, and also maybe some additional employees you need. That those things are going to be impacting your costs. So it's a really good time to take a look at your costs and your pricing structure. I think folks are going to understand that things are different this year, and if you need to change your pricing so that you can be profitable, you really need to take a look at doing that. Some operations in other states, I don't know of many, or if of any for sure, and Dave and Annette, you might know of some that charge an admission to pick your own and then charge for the fruit. And that might be one way to schedule pickers to come, is to sell tickets, and it doesn't have to cost a lot, but it can sell tickets for the opportunity to come and pick, because that's not going to be available for everyone this year. And then charge, for your fruit or produce on top of that. There are some sales tax implications for that. Admission costs are subject to sales tax. So you have to take that into consideration. But definitely take a look at what your costs are going to be and some pricing.
So Megan, a couple other questions came in. One
Okay.
is, do we need to remove the furniture that is currently on the farm market porch? And I would say a yes to that. We don't want people to be lingering this year. Again, that's generally part of the UPick experience, folks coming from the city, getting out in the country and enjoying the day there. But we really want to make sure that we're moving traffic through. Just like at the grocery store, we don't want people lingering. We want them to come in, get their food, and go. And it's just a different sort of year. So you don't want any places where they're going to sit and stay a while.
And certainly if you have any playgrounds or other activities on the farm, this is probably a time when you want to close those off and not allow people into those.
The next one is a money question. What are people charging for a gallon of strawberries?
That's a great question. If you have set your prices, and don't mind entering that into the chat box, we'd love to know what you plan to charge for strawberries this year. Although I do hope that you do take a look and see if there are any additional costs and what that might be. Would you recommend setting up appointments for Pick Your Own, and how long for those appointments? I think, Mike, if you have a way to set up and schedule picking, that could help manage those customers. You have so many spots available. You know how many people can safely be in your field at one time, and you expect a high demand of pickers. You don't want people, lined out onto the road trying to get in to pick. Certainly pre-picked berries would help with that. But if you can schedule pickers, then that would be a great thing to do. How long? That's a good question. I would maybe think about how long your average person is there. Of course, you don't want them to linger, so make that as tight as possible. David and Annette may want to weigh in there. But also recognize you're going to have some folks who may just walk in, and that's a great time to offer them pre-picked berries if you don't happen to have slots available. And also recognize that people are likely to be late and still want to pick. So we'll be looking for some flexibility there. Dave, Annette, or others?
Well, I think scheduling an appointment is going to be, it's a nice idea. I think in reality, it's going to be very difficult. If I show up and want to pick a gallon and somebody else shows up and wants to pick 3 gallons, obviously we've got a time problem, even though I'm a slow picker. I'm not that slow. So it's you've got to have enough time for them to get the fruit that they want, but yet not occupied place in the patch where other people can't get in.
Yeah, I would echo everything Dave and Megan said and add to it that I think that's going to be one person. If you're just trying to do scheduling, that's probably about going to be all that they can do, because when you're really cranking, you know, again, it's going to depend on how many people you can get in there, but it's going to take some orchestration. And like Megan said, you know, when somebody comes and they're late and, oh, we got lost, we've never been here before, and how are you going to handle all of that? So it really has a lot of logistics to it that if you can avoid having to schedule, I think that would be better. So, you know, having a plan, well, we can't get you in right now, but we have this fruit if you just want to buy it and go, or you can wait for, you know, like at a restaurant, when you put your name in, you can wait in your car for an hour and then we'll let you know when somebody's gone. So I think there's other ways you might handle that, or that are less of a headache for the grower.
It depends on how you would do scheduling. I think there are some online tools where you could, if you were going to give people just a set amount of time to go pick, and that's how long do you pick, and you get what you get during that time frame. Now, getting them out of the field may be difficult, more difficult than getting them in. But if you had, you know, so many spots available, people could reserve those spots online. You know, and that might be where, if you were charging an admission and they paid that ahead of time, then if they don't show up, you've at least got that admission fee in your pocket. And then if you have somebody walking in to do that, this is a complicated issue. If somebody has a good system, please share. But I think we're going to have to get creative on lots of levels with that one.
And even though you might do appointments, there will be people showing up that have not called. So having people wait, like Annette was talking about, will have to be part of how we handle that. But this is going to be so much different than what it's been in the past. We're going to have a few pains getting into the ideal scenario, and so I would expect people to show up even though they didn't have an appointment.
Yes, I agree. I agree. A question here: any special concerns about insurance or liability changes for UPick because of COVID-19? Hal Pepper, are you available to visit about this question?
Yes. Found my mute button to unmute. Yeah, that's a very good question. What you really would want to do is check your insurance policy that you have, and see just what it says you have in the way of liability protection there, because each policy is different, and you'll want to maybe talk to your insurance agent, get your policy out, and look at the wording there. Some policies will provide coverage for if you purchase a food product that maybe has a bacteria on it, but it may not cover bacteria that is transmitted from one person to another person. I think typically that's the wording that is often in insurance policies, that you do not have coverage or protection there for the liability of one person exposing another person to bacteria, such as COVID-19. So it behooves us to be aware of that limitation in most policies. Check your policy and see what it says, and then take every precaution that we've talked about tonight to limit the risk of exposure.
There's a question about, do you recommend that we wear masks too? Yes, if it were me, I would recommend that you wear a mask, and I would want to wear a mask because you're probably going to be coming in contact with lots of folks. And so the risk is higher for you than it is for your customers. So it would be a great idea to wear masks. Plus, if you're asking them to wear masks, you're modeling that behavior as well. So when they see you with the mask, they're like, all right, he's wearing a mask, he's the owner, we should wear it too. Or then they see your workers and other people that are there. Next, there's a agritourism question that we know there's a lot of unknowns as far as the future, but changes we might expect for fall agritourism operations, or is it possible we be close to a normal life by then, and then we don't normally sit 6 feet apart on a hayride? Any thoughts on that?
That's an excellent question, Andrew. This is Megan. It is very hard to know what that will be like. I did see an article today about one state and perhaps more states who have are prohibiting any sort of festival through 2020. So in your promotions, don't use the word festival this year. I'm not sure how much that will help, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see. I think it will be different no matter what. I think that we will have to probably use some social distancing of some sort. But what that means now necessarily for school field trips or, weekends at the pumpkin patch, I really don't know. Other folks with more of a clue than I have on this one?
I think we're all clueless on that one.
Yeah.
We hope it won't still be a problem, but like Megan said, a lot of things are canceled pretty far out. So it just remains to be seen.
Yes, and I know that doesn't help, Andrew, but we will definitely be monitoring that as well. One producer did weigh in with what they, or a little bit about their pricing, that they have been charging $12 a gallon for U-Pick and $15 for already picked. They are considering going up to $16 since they're planning on accepting credit cards this year. And it does look like they'll have to have a couple more people working. So considering a price increase, they're up to $16 for pre-picked, it appears. I'm not sure what that means for pick your own, or if you want to clarify that would be great. Somebody asked, where did you say we could get a pattern for mask we could share with customers? We can, I think, perhaps try to find some. There are some patterns out there. I know our regional hospital here has put out a pattern that they are suggesting for folks to make for their employees. So there are various ones out there. Annette, do you happen to have a good one that we could put on the website, or a place you would recommend looking?
Yeah, we can certainly make sure we have a link up on the website, but if you Google CDC mask instructions, it'll come right up, and they tell you how to wear them, and they have several different types to make. So both the sewn kind and kinds you can make without sewing. So cutting up an old t-shirt to make a mask, or using a bandana and a coffee filter and some ponytail holders will do it too. So yeah, there's several, but we'll make sure these are up on the UT Vegetable site tomorrow. NC State also has some on their COVID-19 food safety site as well. So we'll make sure you have links to both of those.
I think we have covered the questions in the chat box. We'll certainly stick around for a while longer in case there are any on here. We have gone past our half an hour time, but we are so thrilled that you joined us tonight and allowed us to try to provide some information to you. Next steps for us, we'll try to put some of these questions and answers and some additional information into a fact sheet. And I think I have all your emails since you registered for this. I'll try to email that out, and also the links to the UT Vegetable COVID-19 resources and the Center for Profitable Agriculture COVID-19 resources page. Please reach out to us if you have additional questions or other ways that we can help. We will be offering some other sessions related to direct marketing in these Twilight question and answer. The next one will be next Thursday night related to garden centers. If any of you have some doing some plant sales or know of somebody who is, we should have some promotions out for that session tomorrow.
One thing I might say is, if you find something that either works quite well for you or doesn't work well, it would be nice to know about it. It definitely, we're going to learn a lot this year, and hopefully if we could share our experiences, we won't have to relearn some of these things in the unfortunate event we might be confronted with something like this again.
Yeah, keep the conversation going. If questions come up as you get into your season, please let us know that too, and we'll be happy to find you an answer if we don't know it off the top of our heads.
We appreciate you all being with us tonight. We appreciate all the UT Extension specialists who were able to join us, who participated in the planning and in the answering of questions, and also our friends at the Department of Agriculture who are doing everything they can to support agriculture during this time and provide guidance and share information with producers and consumers. Thank you all. Stay well.
Thank you, Megan.
Have a good strawberry season.